Your attitude determines your direction, and direction determines your destination, which means that long before your life changes on the outside, it shifts on the inside in the quiet place where you interpret what happens to you, decide what it means, and choose what you will do next. Because two people can face the same circumstances, the same economy, the same family pressure, the same delays, the same rejection, the same fear, and still end up living completely different lives. Not because one had a magical advantage and the other didn't, but because one carried an attitude that kept pointing them forward, while the other carried an attitude that kept pulling them backward. And that's why attitude is not a nice to have. It's not soft. It's not decoration. It's the steering wheel of your life. Most people think success is mainly about intelligence, talent, resources, or luck. And yes, those things can matter, but none of them matter as much as the direction you move in every day. And your direction is shaped by your attitude, because attitude decides whether you see a problem as proof that you should stop or as a signal that you should adapt, whether you treat pressure as a reason to panic or a reason to focus, whether you treat criticism as an attack or as information, whether you treat a setback as a dead end or a detour, and most importantly, whether you treat your current situation as a prison or as a starting point. If you want to understand why your attitude is so powerful, understand that your attitude is not just how you feel. It is the lens you live through, the filter that decides what you notice, what you ignore, what you magnify, and what you minimize. And if your lens is negative, fearful, bitter, or hopeless, you can be surrounded by opportunity and still miss it. But if your lens is disciplined, grateful, responsible, and solution-focused, you can be surrounded by obstacles and still find a way through, because life always gives you both problems and possibilities, and your attitude decides which one becomes your reality. The dangerous part is that many people don't realize they have an attitude problem because attitude hides inside logic. It hides inside statements that sound reasonable, like, it's not the right time, I'll start when I'm ready, I can't because my situation is different, I don't have time, I'm not like them, I'm too late, I need more confidence. And these phrases can sound responsible, but they often function as a quiet refusal to move. And when you refuse to move, your direction becomes the same year after year. And then one day you wake up shocked that time passed, but your life stayed the same. That is how people lose years, not by one huge mistake, but by small daily attitudes that keep them pointed at comfort instead of growth. Excuses instead of ownership, waiting instead of building. Your attitude determines your direction, because direction is created by repeated choices, and repeated choices are created by repeated thoughts, and repeated thoughts are created by the attitude you carry, the mental posture you bring to your day before anything even happens. The story you tell yourself about who you are and what's possible for you. Some people wake up and their attitude is already defeated before their feet touch the floor. They assume the day will be stressful. People will be difficult. Nothing will work. They will be behind. And then they live into that expectation, because expectation shapes attention, and attention shapes experience. Other people wake up and they don't pretend life is easy. They don't deny challenges, but they decide they will be responsible. They will respond instead of react. They will focus on what they can control. They will take the next step. And that decision shapes their whole day, because life often becomes what you repeatedly practice, and attitude is a practice. The problem is that many people believe attitude is something you either have or you don't, like a personality trait. But attitude is trained, and whatever you practice becomes familiar, and whatever becomes familiar starts to feel like you. So if you have practiced negativity, complaining, overthinking, and self-doubt for years, it may feel natural. But natural doesn't mean true. It means trained. And anything trained can be retrained. Changing your attitude is not about fake positivity. It's about changing what you do with reality. It's about shifting from, why is this happening to me, to, what can I do about it? Because the first question creates helplessness, and the second creates power. A helpless attitude says, I'm stuck. A powerful attitude says, I'm starting. A helpless attitude says, it's not fair. A powerful attitude says, it may not be fair, but I will still build. A helpless attitude says, I can't. A powerful attitude says, I can learn. And the difference between those two attitudes is the difference between a life that repeats and a life that grows. Your attitude determines your direction because your attitude decides whether you will take responsibility for the next step, and responsibility is the foundation of progress. Because life does not reward blame, it rewards action. Blame feels good for a moment because it gives you a reason, but it steals your power. Because if everything is someone else's fault, then nothing is in your control. And when you feel out of control, you shrink, you hesitate, you procrastinate, you stop taking risks, you stop improving, and you stop building. Responsibility is not saying you caused everything that happened to you. Responsibility is saying you will not let what happened decide what happens next. And that is a life-changing attitude, because now your future is not chained to your past. It is connected to your choices. Once you accept that attitude determines direction, you stop asking for a life without obstacles, and you start asking for a mind that can handle obstacles, because obstacles are guaranteed, but being broken by obstacles is optional. Life will test you with delays, rejection, criticism, uncertainty, and sometimes unfairness. And the question is not, will tests come? The question is, what attitude will you bring when they arrive? Because the attitude you bring will determine whether you quit early or persist, whether you crumble or learn, whether you become bitter or become better. And bitterness is one of the most expensive attitudes you can carry because it drains energy without producing results. It keeps you stuck in the past while your future waits for you to move. A better attitude doesn't deny pain. It refuses to live there. It says, I can be hurt and still be responsible. I can be tired and still be consistent. I can be afraid and still act. Because courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is the attitude that says fear does not get the final vote. And when you adopt that attitude, your direction changes immediately, because now you are moving, and movement is everything, because action creates clarity, and clarity creates confidence, and confidence creates consistency, and consistency creates outcomes. Many people are waiting for confidence to arrive before they act, but confidence often arrives after you act. Because confidence is not a gift, it is evidence. And evidence is built by doing what you said you would do. This is why one of the strongest ways to change your attitude is to keep small promises to yourself, because every kept promise is a vote for a new identity, and identity is a compass that sets direction. If you keep telling yourself you will start and you don't, you teach yourself that your words don't matter, and then your goals feel heavy because deep down you don't trust your follow-through. But if you choose one small promise and keep it daily, you begin building self-trust, and self-trust changes your attitude, because now you don't feel helpless, you feel capable. That capability changes your direction because you stop avoiding hard things, you stop negotiating with discomfort, and you start doing the work that creates results. Discomfort is not danger, it is growth in progress. And the attitude that changes lives is the attitude that stops treating discomfort like an emergency and starts treating it like training. Think about any area where you've ever improved. Strength, skill, education, communication, leadership, health, discipline, even confidence. None of it came without discomfort. So if you run from discomfort, you run from growth. And if you run from growth, your direction stays the same. Your attitude determines whether you see discomfort as a price you are willing to pay or as a threat you must avoid. And that choice determines your destination. People who grow do not have fewer problems. They have a different relationship with problems. They don't see problems as proof they're cursed. They see problems as a call to improve, to adjust, to learn, and to rise. A negative attitude makes everything personal. Every delay becomes an insult. Every criticism becomes an attack. Every obstacle becomes a sign you should stop. But a mature attitude stays objective. It asks, what can I control? What can I learn? What can I do next? Because the mature mind is not obsessed with comfort. It is committed to progress. And progress is built by habits, not hype. Hype can inspire you for a day, but habits change your direction for a year. So if you truly want to change your direction, you must change what you repeatedly do. And to change what you repeatedly do, you must change what you repeatedly believe, because beliefs drive behavior. A person with a weak attitude believes, I need perfect conditions. A person with a strong attitude believes, I can start where I am. A person with a weak attitude believes, I must feel motivated. A person with a strong attitude believes, I can be disciplined without motivation. And discipline is really just attitude turned into action. Discipline is the attitude of choosing the right action even when you don't feel like it. And that is why disciplined people feel more free over time, because discipline gives you options, while undisciplined living turns into limitation. If you want to see how attitude shapes direction in everyday life, look at the small moments. When the alarm rings, attitude decides whether you get up or hit snooze. When you face a tough task, attitude decides whether you focus or scroll. When you get criticized, attitude decides whether you learn or argue. When you make a mistake, attitude decides whether you correct or collapse. When you feel stressed, attitude decides whether you plan or panic. These small decisions seem insignificant, but repeated daily, they become your direction, and your direction becomes your life. That's why a shift in attitude, even a small one, can create a massive shift in your future, because small shifts in direction held consistently create huge changes in destination. Imagine a plane leaving one airport and the pilot changes the angle by just a few degrees. It looks like nothing at first, but hours later it lands in a completely different country. That is exactly what happens when you change your attitude. You are changing your angle. And if you hold that new angle long enough, you end up somewhere new. The attitude that determines a better direction is built on a few core principles: ownership, gratitude, learning, and consistency. Ownership means you stop living like life is happening to you, and you start living like life is being shaped by you. Because even when you cannot control the full situation, you can control your response, and your response is your power. Gratitude means you stop wasting energy on bitterness and entitlement, and you start noticing what is working and what you can build with. Because gratitude is not weakness, it is fuel. It keeps you hungry without making you hateful. It keeps you ambitious without making you miserable. And a miserable person struggles to stay consistent. Learning means you stop needing to be right and you start needing to improve, because ego blocks growth, but humility accelerates it. And consistency means you stop acting like your best self only when you feel like it, and you start acting like your best self, because that is who you are becoming. Consistency is not doing everything. It is doing something, and it is returning quickly when you slip. Many people fail not because they slip, but because they turn a slip into a story. I failed, so I might as well quit. But a stronger attitude says, I slipped, so I will correct and continue. And that one difference determines direction. Now, if you want your attitude to determine a stronger direction, you must also guard your inputs, because your mind becomes what it repeatedly consumes. If you start your day with chaos, comparison, and negativity, your attitude will become chaotic, comparative, and negative. And then you will wonder why your discipline feels weak. Start your day with intentional inputs: quiet, planning, reflection, prayer, journaling, reading, learning, movement, and your attitude becomes steadier, because you trained your mind before the world tried to train it for you. Most people wake up and immediately give their attention away, and attention is your life in minutes. So if you give your attention away to things that don't build you, you will feel drained before you even begin. A stronger attitude protects attention, and protected attention creates direction, and direction creates results. Your attitude also shapes your relationships, and relationships shape your opportunities, because opportunities often come through people. A toxic attitude, complaining, negativity, arrogance, unreliability, closes doors that talent could have opened, while a strong attitude, professionalism, humility, calm under pressure, solution-focused behavior, opens doors that talent alone cannot. This is why attitude is often the difference between someone who keeps getting chances and someone who keeps being overlooked. People can teach skills, but they hesitate to tolerate bad attitude. A person who is still learning but brings a strong attitude becomes valuable quickly because they are coachable, consistent, and reliable. And value changes direction because value attracts opportunity. If you want to change your direction financially, professionally, and personally, become more valuable. And value is built through attitude-driven habits. Learning skills, showing up, finishing tasks, keeping your word, communicating clearly, solving problems, and staying respectful under pressure. Now let's address a hard truth. Many people stay stuck because they use their past as permission to keep a weak attitude. They say, "This is just how I am. I've always been this way. My family is like this. My background is like this." But your past explains you. It does not excuse you, and it definitely does not define your future unless you let it. Your past is a place to learn from, not a place to live in, and a strong attitude says, "I will not use my history as a prison. I will use it as fuel." Because if you have survived hard things, that survival is evidence of strength, and strength can be redirected into growth. You may have lost time, but time is not the only resource. You still have choice, and choice is powerful. Your attitude determines your direction, not your age, not your starting point, not your mistakes, because direction begins with what you do next, not what you did before. And if you don't like where your life is going, you don't need a miracle. You need a new direction, and you get a new direction through a new attitude. Here is how that becomes practical. Decide that your attitude will be judged by your actions, not your intentions. Decide that you will not complain without moving toward a solution. Decide that you will replace "I can't" with "how can I." Decide that you will do the minimum on hard days so you don't fall into zero. Decide that you will keep one daily promise to yourself. Decide that you will measure your day by progress, not by mood. Decide that you will stop comparing your beginning to someone else's results. Decide that you will treat failure as feedback, not as identity. These decisions are attitude, and attitude becomes direction when you repeat them, and repetition is where change becomes real. You cannot think your way into a better life without acting your way into a better life, and you cannot act consistently without a trained attitude, because the world will test you. That is why the phrase matters. Your attitude determines your direction, because direction is the path you walk when nobody is cheering, when nobody is watching, when motivation is low, when results are slow, when life is noisy. Your direction is what you do when it's inconvenient. And if you can hold your attitude steady through inconvenience, you will win. Not because you are lucky, but because you are consistent. And consistency is what makes ordinary people extraordinary over time. So if you want your attitude to point you toward a better life, start today with one honest shift. Stop asking life to be easier and start training yourself to be stronger, because strength is the only thing that travels with you into every situation. Money can come and go. Opportunities can rise and fall. People can change. Circumstances can shift. But a strong attitude, responsible, disciplined, grateful, resilient, will keep your direction forward no matter what the day brings. And when your direction stays forward long enough, your destination changes. That is not motivational fantasy. That is the mathematics of life. Small choices repeated create big outcomes. So choose the attitude that builds, not the attitude that breaks. Choose the attitude that learns, not the attitude that blames. Choose the attitude that returns, not the attitude that quits. Choose the attitude that says, "I will do what I can with what I have today," because that attitude creates movement. Movement creates momentum. Momentum creates belief. Belief creates consistency. And consistency creates results. And one day, sooner than you think, if you stay consistent, you will look back and realize the biggest thing that changed was not the world around you. It was the world inside you. The attitude you trained, the direction you held, and the life you built because you refused to let excuses, fear, or negativity choose your path.